Hello, Ian.
Hey, hello, Northern lad.
So you took this picture for the City Life magazine, which was basically Manchester's, hey, what's on, what's interesting in Manchester, you know, uh,
A bit like Time Out, City Limits in London.
yeah, with
What's
features
on?
about,
What's on for the next 2 weeks?
yeah. Um, so you took that in 1987, and literally because of the NFTs, etc., I was working on a thing called a Quantel paint box, which was invented for video, but at that time, and it was video quality, which broadcast video quality at those in those days was not, HD and super HD like it is now. It was invented for video to digitally manipulate images and film. It was about £150,000 per computer. It was so advanced. Made in
Huge.
England in Newbury. It's the 50th anniversary this year of the company being founded, and literally tomorrow is the day when the factory closes. It used to make Spitfires, and yeah, yeah, it's really poignant time to do this while Quantel still exists as a factory.
And
Um,
what date is it today? That'd be interesting. Anybody watching this? It's the 23rd of February. So we're talking about the 24th of February,
yeah,
2023.
the purpose of this today is to take this portrait, um, in a way, using all the technology, but you basically turned up at well, it's a debate whether it's Stockport or Manchester, where the Quantel paint box was, the room, and took this portrait. And I'd already set up this idea of kind of what I wanted on the screen, just to make it easier for you, to be honest. Because being a photographer, I knew, okay, you didn't want to sit around and wait for me an hour to create the image. So
Mm.
if I could make it easy for you, and then you focus on literally, the composition and the way it should look and the lighting and all that, that's your skill.
And you knew that that image that you pre-created would translate well in a picture in a magazine. I mean, that was you knew that that was where it was going,
Yeah,
and you knew that people hadn't seen the results of a Quantel before. So keep it simple, keep it direct.
the concept of the image, it had pound signs all over it, and we can flash it up on the screen, I'm sure, but it had pound signs all over it because it was basically about going into business, which
It's about entrepreneurship, yeah,
yeah, so it's about making money, isn't it? Really, you got to make money to
to
survive
survive
in business.
and thrive, yeah.
It wasn't about being rich, but it was about, okay, we need to make enough money to survive, and to make a go of it.
Nobody that I photographed for that in that series of pictures was in it primarily to make money.
Right.
That they did something that they loved and were determined and tried very hard to make a living at it. But their prime motivation was not money.
I was doing an updated version of it. So I had this pound sign. It had me, and I knew I would be above the monitor. So I had this view of me looking upwards at myself. Is what they call meta now, isn't it? Really, but it was me being in this paint box, and there's a big crack across my face. No jokes, please. Comments below. Um, and and but I think the visual idea was like, oh, you've cracked being in business. That was like a phrase back then. Oh, you cracked it. Was like you're successful. So that was the visual behind it. So I did this. I've done this new version with me, obviously now, and with a dollar sign. And I bought the same camera because literally it's like $100 to buy the same video camera that Quantel gave. That was, I think, at the time, well, it was £3,000 or £4,000 camera that now is worth 50. Doesn't work, but it looks good in the same tripod. On that screen there,
Uh-huh.
I can put a live view of the camera, so you can look at this screen and direct me, even though the camera is looking at me. Remember, I have no chin, so I have to do this to make me look at least less chinless.
Photographic 45 degrees above again, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
It's the same for all of us.
So
That chin line, lovely.
so here's the paint box now, which is this thing. The version this came out in 1989. This is a 1991. These are the outputs. So that's a magnetic optical drive, which is like a giant CD. This is a printer. This is the floppy drive, which is 8-inch wide floppy drive. You get one image on a floppy drive. Yeah, so
Yeah, they were really small amount of memory, weren't they?
so you've not seen this yet, but there is the new version.
I can see. Great. There's so many similarities of color, and yeah, it's a dollars signs going on rather than the
let me
pound
get rid of
signs.
the menu.
Great.
So that's pretty much an exact reproduction of what we did back then.
Love your glasses.
Yeah, the images.
That's great. Yeah, that's super.
Those images behind were literally the same images that went in the one on the left, the woman's face, went in an exhibition called Art and Computers in 1988, which
your tripod's slightly in the way of that, I think.
So let me. There you go.
That's it. Yeah, got it.
So that's cool. And then above there is a picture, the original picture by some bloke called Ian. So yeah, we've got all the elements, and actually the table that I thought is better to use, well, I mean, I did show you, gave you options, is this, which is actually a school desk, which goes back to the fact it was, you know, a college where you shot it before. I know it all sounds like, you know, arty-farty, whatever, but...
So it's a school desk where it's got an inkwell in it and a flip top.
Yeah. Proper. So I think that, you know, all these different layers, even if you don't notice it, we know it's there, and that's kind of nice.
Yeah, that's lovely. It's great. You've really pulled it all together.
So the idea is I would have this here. In fact, maybe I can get both of these images in there at the same time. And let me see if I switch on the camera. You see, so you can see what the camera is seeing right now.
Yes, I've got you. I understand that. That's nice, and yes, it's clear enough.
So in theory, it was something like this.
Yeah, for us to recreate the something like the original one.
Sorry for the flicker. Obviously, that's not a real. That's just the interaction.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it won't appear on the actual still that we're going to create, will it?
Cropped off.
Maybe it's not obvious. It's a camera when we zoom in too much. Out again, please, Adrian. Let's go back to how you just had it a few seconds ago. Okay. Well, would you like to stand in the picture over the monitor, my friend? That's a nice lean you've got there. I'm just going to pull up the original again and see. I'm not going to I don't think it's right to reproduce it exactly as we can. I have done pictures in the past where we're trying to be really exact. I went to great lengths to find this picture. I knew I had it somewhere, and it was all boxed up amongst many hundreds of other pictures. So I did one photograph where one portrait you're looking into my lens, and another one where you're looking into the lens of your JVC.
Is that camera?
So let's start with you looking at me, I think. And you need to kind of use the monitor almost as if you're putting your weight on it, I think. So put your body against the monitor. Put your tummy against the monitor. Go slightly behind it, Adrian. Slightly behind if you can. I don't know how much room is there. Yes, that's better. I think so. So you're now transferring your weight. It'll take it, won't it? Because it's pretty stable as that school table. Right. So that's good. One tweak.
Yeah.
Try and reproduce what you had. Are your arms in the correct place? Your hand is further away from your body. Yeah, your right hand is further away, more towards the far edge of the TV monitor. Bring your left hand in, and almost tuck it slightly more under your armpit, your right armpit. I don't want to see so much of your hand.
The right hand or the left?
Left. Yes, you've got it. That's it. So flop more onto it a wee.
It's a bit of a strange height to take my weight, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's probably a different height to how it was 30 odd years ago.
I do look sharp.
Well, that's a nice relaxed look about you. Would you bring that up again, my friend?
Of course.
I just want to see your arms on it. Just see that everything looks okay. Hang on. Go back to your arms, please, Adrian.
Yeah, this is one. We did a few versions of this.
Put your hand in the same position, but move your body a little bit further
behind,
towards the middle of the monitor, you know? Stretch over a wee bit more. Yes. I'm liking that. It's a strong image. I love where you are in that picture. The eye goes to you, which is what I said I wanted.
Part of this is to celebrate this, you know, time that we went through, but also to see that nothing really has changed. Back then, so 87, there was no such thing as a digital camera. The JPEG hadn't even been invented, nothing. We were talking about doing a portrait with Isambard Kingdom Brunel, using that as a theme. So it's one of my favorite photographs from 1850. Well, the ship that he built, where he stood in front of the chains, it laid the first transatlantic cable. And that's like 1860s or whatever. And here we are.
He didn't build it to do that, but it ended up doing that because that was what was needed at the time.
And actually, that's another interesting thing.
Forefront of technology, that's what you're saying.
Yeah, and actually, he invented that ship, the big first steel hull ship or whatever, and propeller driven, and all these inventions to be a fast passenger ship to go to America. And there wasn't the demand for it, and actually, it became something that was really efficient at something else that he didn't envisage. And that's that's the story of technology a lot, right? Technology quite often is the idea, well, we set it up for this reason, but actually it's used for something else, which then takes another life. Ferranti's computer, the one that Alan Turing worked on, they've got a replica in the Manchester Museum, the Science and Industry Museum. So the first ever pixel in the world was that computer, 1 pixel. So we all rely on pixels completely now, and that had 1 pixel. And then I think Alan Turing was speaking to his friend or something and said, oh, it'd be funny to do like, a game on this. So he did what they call tic-tac-toe over here, noughts and crosses. So he did a program that you could play noughts and crosses on this giant, room-sized computer. So that was in Manchester. So the first ever video game it was invented in Manchester, which is nuts.
Yeah, we still do that. We still play solitaire.
The interesting thing with technology is that technology is it's the hardware and the software. It's there to enable something, but it needs a creative mind, whether that's a programmer or an artist, to bring that thing to life and give it some use. And even a commercial use takes a creative brain to think, oh, what could be the application that's commercially good for this? And that's where we come in, right? We were and are these creative people that use, a camera or digital stuff or whatever in this way that then ideally pushes the boundaries, or just messes with the technology as well, or just like everybody else on the planet, just uses it for its convenience.
I think the other convenience is it. I think the other thing that is worth mentioning is just the speed, the turnaround of a commission. I could photograph a theatre show, a dress rehearsal, the day before it went on show to the public, and then the next afternoon the theatre would have these big blow-up pictures that I've done for the outside of the theatre. They'd have all their little prints done that they would then send out to the press, all well within 24 hours.
Yeah.
And it cut out us having to use Red Star, which was a British rail service where you do your pictures, your prints, and you've got to beat the deadline of something like 1 o'clock in the morning to get it on the next train that then goes down to London, then that goes to the Daily Mirror or the NME or whoever it is, or Time Out magazine. It cut out that, so the speed was a major thing. And we're not really talking about images that were particularly manipulated. It just was, you could take them on film, scan them to digital, and then do all that I've mentioned.
Right.
Cutting out the physical aspect of posting.
And before then, I mean, I've talked about my archive just being, lost just because you'd send things to a magazine or wherever it was going to go, and they didn't necessarily send it back, right? They just put it in a filing cabinet somewhere, or there's obviously this.
My photographs are ending up in a lot in America, and people are selling them on eBay, but that's my property because it was in a photo library in London. And then they've been pilfered and ended up in Australia or quite a lot in the USA. And people are selling these silver prints that I did before digital.
Well, back then, so 87, there was no such thing as a digital camera. The JPEG hadn't even been invented, nothing. To find a photographer who was good,
the feeling was great.
There was maybe a directory, there was the Yellow Pages, or there was, some creative directories. But generally, if I saw, your picture on the front of the NME, I'd be like, oh, that guy's successful. He's like, get him in, because he's shooting all these amazing bands and whatever. And the same with me. So it's a super important thing to get a photo credit in those days.
Yeah, it was. It would lead to other work, like you're saying, and keep you in there.
So what we've got today is we have no transatlantic cable. We're bouncing across a satellite, but it's the same thing, different mode, I'm sure. I wonder if that cable is still actually wired up. And I'm sure it's all, decayed by now and got fuzzy. But anyway, basically it was so hard to get on one of these things, so they gave 3 to different art colleges to get art students involved and give them access. And being at Blackpool College, and I was a photographer there, I liked the fact that I could just basically come up with ideas and make it real rather than have to go in a dark room and cut things out. And it was just beyond skills of most people to do the kind of things you can do on Photoshop in an instant. By 1986, and I went down and looked and worked on the prototype, Quantel realized, there's people want to do the same for photographs, but the resolution wasn't as high. So they launched a graphic paint box, and the image on the front of the brochure was one that I took that they manipulated around, which was basically Photoshop. But it was Photoshop 1.0, which was useless, was launched in 1990. So it's at least 5 years, probably in practical terms, it's about 8 years ahead of Photoshop. So everything was called Paintboxed at the time. And, the Nirvana album cover with the baby, that was done on a paint box. Silence of the Lambs posters, The Doors, all the things in the late 80s, early 90s that required high quality digital retouching was done on the paint box, so 90%. So from 85 to 90, I was the first photographer who basically my business was set up to do digital photo manipulation. So I was the first in the world to basically do Photoshop, which is cool. It makes it like, sorry?
You're the man.
Well, it was annoying at the time because you had this thing which obviously being the first means it's sort of a gimmick. People go, oh, this is cool and interesting. We'll get it because it's interesting, not necessarily because it's creative or anything. They just want the gimmick of saying they were using this early technology, and having to go and explain to everybody what it was difficult. And at the time, uh, the paint box, just to be, I used to go to London, I'd be paid £300 an hour as a freelancer to work on commercials and stuff. So I could earn more money, to be honest with you, working in the commercial area, but I was trying to push, this arty commercial area, which was manipulating photography. So that's where it started. And then by 1990, I ended up going back more to conventional photography, which, thanks to a magazine that I stumbled across after seeing somebody to show my paint box work, a magazine in Stockport called Disco Mirror. And I ended up photographing all these nightclubs and bars and restaurants and hotels. So then I just basically transitioned back to just conventional photography. And all the stuff that I got, I put it in my mum's attic, where it remained until March 2021, when somebody in New York with the NFT said, "Oh, everyone's looking for all the early digital art." And
so that was in the attic for what, about 20 something years, 21, 22 years? Something?
Yeah, no, longer than that. Yeah, 90, 31 years.
It's longer. I've miscalculated.
1990. Yeah, so God bless her, my mum. That's a nice thing when your mum lives in the same two up, two down for decades. She just got an attic with a box of your stuff in. So she'd kept it. Because if I'd have had it, to be honest with you, I've moved a few times, emigrated, got divorced, whatever. It would have, got damaged. I would have shown the kids or shown friends and bits missing and got flooded.
That is the general story of photography. That this is when stuff, or someone has to move and cannot move their stuff into the new place because it's too small.
Right.
And the stories of photographers, Brian Duffy, who was one of the three photographers with David Bailey, and three of them had a studio together in London. And these three guys were they were the go-to hip, cool photographers of the 60s. And Brian Duffy had to move out, and he was seen with a skip dumping all these pictures into them. That he had to calculate which ones am I going to trash and which ones am I going to keep. Of course, he was trashing history.
Yeah, but you didn't see it as history. I mean, I didn't think I was the first. I just assumed there was somebody doing what I did, either in London. You couldn't even necessarily know what was happening in London, apart from it being in Creative Review or something. You didn't really know, unless somebody wrote about somebody else doing the same thing. You wouldn't know necessarily. And there wasn't, remember, it's early on, so there wasn't even a community where you could say, "Oh, let's go to the digital computer club," and go, "Oh, there's 5 of you." And I would have liked to have been, I'm a community kind of person. So it was a very solitary thing. I'm not saying it's like, "Oh, poor old me," but I'm saying it in terms of you just got on with your own thing. And actually what was nice was, well, like when you do something that nobody's ever done before, it's great because you don't feel like, hey, this doesn't match up to something. If you're doing oil painting, you're going to say, well, this is not a Rembrandt, is it? It's rubbish.
I don't think you should really dismiss or underestimate the what you did and I did and a few others did about working on their own. Because you said something about it was, to paraphrase it, you weren't working with other people like the majority of the workforce in the UK was doing. You had to do this solo. Now, don't underestimate this. Most people cannot work in that way, or could not at the time work in that way. They would go, "Oh, I'll never do that. It's a lonely existence." And you had to work alone. You had to create, you had to market yourself alone. You had to do all your accounts alone, all the boring stuff. And then the creative stuff, you had to come up with the ideas. You had to get the equipment together. You had to test the equipment before a shoot. There was so much to do on your own. The responsibility was all on your shoulders, on my shoulders, and anybody else that chose to be in certain types of businesses.
I've put these new trousers on.
Oh, they're ace. They're your artist painting trousers, I take it.
Yeah, so this is this homage reference, whatever, to Isambard King of Brunel.
You're kitted out there. I think that looks good. Potentially.
Cool.
That's good. It's better than white t-shirt for this one, I think.
Yeah. And I think it's nice to keep the Quantel thing on. But yeah, so that's the view.
But we're going to have to move that over to your left, my right, please, towards the window.
You mean this way? I know which way you mean.
Yeah.
Isambard was sat on this like big wooden stump. I've got this camera case here, you know, the lights we used to use. So maybe
they're all obsolete now, those lights that went inside. Who uses them now, eh?
So something like this. You know, where there's that classic shot where he's like this, like with his top hat looking cool, but then that we love that one that's like,
yeah, let's do it without the stovepipe hat. What I like about it is the power of that pose. But for you, I want it to have a boldness about you, not over the top.
Yeah,
acting.
It's like, I mean, he's got a giant ship behind him. He doesn't need to like try and look manly.
He doesn't need to prove anything to anybody.
No, and he's in front of that chain, and obviously this is a whole chain of events, etc. And also, you know, that was new technology at the time, the first metal ship and stuff, and this was new technology for its time. So I think it's a very similar, you know, it's got all these kind of similar elements to it, but of a different period, you know, 1850 to 1987 to 2023, you know. So I think it's all about that time, technology, you know, human behind the the human behind it all.
The difference in this is we want some strength to this picture, but not too theatrical. We've got to have the right balance. You've got to have some good presence. But if, Adrian, you can move into the middle of this picture so that your head is down the center of the crease of the room. You know what I mean by the crease of the the room? Symmetry, my friend.
Yeah.
And the hands are great. You've got the kind of, you know, one's hidden under here.
Trying to
him, I think he was holding his heart. He might have been pretty poorly at the time, but you, it just looks a little bit odd, and it's intriguing, and I like that. Bit more upright, my friend. So you a bit like that. I just want a bit more.
It's
just got, just slightly bolder in the shoulders, a bit more of a ramrod back, but not you know, not like Sergeant Major ramrod. Just a straighter back, please. Yeah, I think we need to hide your fingers.
Are you allowed to Photoshop this or what? It should be as, you know, we use modern.
Well, I don't mind Photoshopping things sometimes. This one, if we Photoshop it, it shouldn't really look Photoshopped particularly. There's got to be a purpose. There's got to be a reason why we Photoshop it, isn't there? You don't just Photoshop for the sake of it. Oh, you've moved slightly. That tweak was good. Something happened.
Yeah, I'm exactly between those two pictures. So let's zoom in on that. I'm really going for the sharpness of my face. Yeah, that's good to me.
Great, man. It's really important, the positioning, and to bring the power of you. The power of there's a lot going on in that picture, so it has to be your presence. Oh, that's cool, mate. Really good. Right. Yeah, the positioning of your body position is good. Yeah, it's lovely.
I mean, you know, the sharp, that's sharp enough, right?
Oh, absolutely it is. Yeah. Yeah, it's bob on, mate.
I think this is fantastic. And you pick which picture of Isambard you wanted. You wanted the one where he looks exhausted, but you wanted me to not look exhausted.
Oh, like exhausted, yeah.
You wanted me to look like strong, even though
who you are now to me, yeah.
Which is that thing about a photographer can make you could have said, hey, just put your head down and look downwards, and all of a sudden I look really tired like Isambard. So that's your skill as a photographer, that you decided all of that process and the composition. So so that I consider that all your shot, really. The other thing is, I'm sort of happy now that I didn't have that remote release, because I felt I could just relax with my hands. Otherwise, I'd have been holding that and trying to grip it and hide that in the picture. That actually worked in my favor, that I couldn't find that.
If you hadn't have been going backwards and forwards to the camera and setting the self timer, if we'd have wanted more variations, say it was a magazine shoot and they've gone, right, we need approximately 4 photographs for the inside feature and we need a front cover picture. So you've got to come up with a minimum, Ian, of 5. So at least we can edit. So I'd be going, right, I'm going to come up with 5 really strong variations as I can. I'm going to try and fit in a couple more variation ideas. We could have worked a lot faster if it had been a bigger shoot.
Yeah. Yeah, and so lift that on here and hold it there.
A disadvantage.
Yeah, it's certainly not.
Sometimes you need more variation.
I mean, it's definitely not a perfect system or way of doing it. That's obviously why people now go back to going on shoots rather than just sticking it this way.
Yeah, I think we've got a great shot. Yeah.
To me, I think this whole process and what it means, and the change of analog and digital and Photoshop and all these things, and now we've incorporated all those elements in this process. It shows you that everything changes and everything stays the same, right? All of it. So
the more it changes, the more it stays the same.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this.
Good, me too.